Good morning. Hello. Okay, we've got some stragglers, I guess. My name's Dave Hayes. I'm the president of the association. And I want to first show on the screen the agenda for our meeting. Can we see that? Yeah, we can see that. I'm going to welcome our board of directors members, our staff, and we'll go to the main event of the annual meeting, a presentation by Rob and Tricia regarding. Can't hear you. Oh, how about now? Can you turn it up, Andy? Here we go. So then Rob and Trish will talk about the lake, the health of our lake, and then we'll go to the financial overview by David Herr, and then I will go fire through, hopefully briefly, the committee reports. I'm not going to have all the committee chairmen up here, maybe one of them, but beyond that, I'll just summarize the activities, and then we'll go to the election, the result of the election of new directors. I will then be calling for somebody to move for the amendment of our bylaws regarding the scheduling of our annual meeting. And then we'll go into question and answers. Anyway, so here we go. The officers, as you see, are Hayes as president, Edward Lanfear, vice president, Lori Lyman, secretary, and David Herr, our treasurer. Would you stand up, please? And Corinne Cochran, if she's here. Dale DeYager, Tom Duttmers, Renee Imey, Cal Killen, Bill Meserve, Vic Pierce, and Bill Whitler. Would you stand, please? Thank you for your service. Our staff is composed of, I think everybody knows Rob Carner, our lake biologist, Tricia Denton, our coordinator, guardian, ambassador. We have a number of other people that help us. Lenora Page is our bookkeeper. Laura Wiesen, Joe Blondia, Bruce and Laura Hood are our merganser trappers and water itch staff. And Cecilia Denton is somebody that's helped us with regard to water quality and collection of data. I think everybody probably has reviewed in detail the minutes of our annual meeting from last year, right? Can I have a motion to approve those minutes, please? Second, all in favor? Opposed? Thank you. So now we get into our biologist, Mr. Carner's report. Thank you.
So welcome everybody. This is an exciting part of the event where we have annually awarding stewardship awards to people who we want to recognize for their accomplishments in protecting and preserving our watershed. So joining with me is Tricia Denton, our ambassador for the Guardian Program and administrative assistant. And so it's with great pleasure that we focus in on the Fisher Lake-Glen Lake connection. Everybody know what I'm talking about? The Fisher Lake Canal. And on each side of that canal, both to the west and to the east, are some people that we think are doing the right thing. And I thought about who this award could go to, and this is just like the tip of the iceberg. So many of you sitting here are doing the right thing for our lake. You love our lake. You're doing wonderful things. You're putting together the best management practices to keep our waters clean and protected. So to all of you who are not receiving this award today, thank you. But for now, we'd like to take the first award being the Backuses, and then also the Gas family. Would you please come forward and stand next to us? Joe. Now notice they're standing here in the order in which it is on the canal. Isn't this great? So we're giving them a framed certificate, which you can see how it's written on the screen behind me. And I'm going to have to look at one of these to read closely. So this is both for the Gass and the Backus family. Thank you for conserving and maintaining their natural shoreline along Big Fisher and Big Glen, for their commitment for using best management practices to enhance water quality. So let's give them another big round of applause. I want to say one more thing about not just their shoreline and their property, but if you all understand what riparian rights are, and when you think about riparian rights, you think of we own the bottomlands of our lake in a pie-shaped wedge to the center of the lake. These folks own the bottomlands of the Fisher Canal. And that canal fills up with sand, and it needs to be dredged periodically. In fact, Big Fisher and Little Fisher have a special assessment district that allows for money to pay for that dredging periodically. And these folks have the right to shut that whole process down. And that canal could get shallower and shallower to the point where it would not be navigable. Raise your hand in the audience. How many of you go in that canal regularly? Yeah, isn't it a great place? You get to see all kinds of wildlife, but here's the thing. If they allowed that canal to be dredged to a depth of 20, 30 feet, that's an exaggeration, and to put all those spoils irresponsibly somewhere and put on a steel-girded seawall on both sides, it would change the whole complexion of that waterway. So as you travel through there, think of the Backuses and the Gasses and thank them for how they manage not just their shoreline and their property, but the bottom of the canal. Thank you very much. Thank you. So these pictures up here, Andy, were you putting these up here? Yeah, these are photographs on the Backus family. You all probably have seen this. Look at that natural shoreline. And then the Gass family. I love as a biologist to go there because there's so much biodiversity there. It's astounding. Okay, we're going to move into the next part of the event, which is the state of the lake. What do you think are the major threats to our watershed? What are the things that, if they went wrong, we'd be in a heap of trouble? Tourism? No. That's all right. You ever see Bill Meserve turn red? He's turning red now. No, I think what I think of are the major threats are biological pollution. And a lot of people coin that as invasive species. Because we are in touch with a lot of lake associations around the state. And they're battling with things that invade their lakes and cause millions of dollars to clean up. So we think that that's a big threat because it could cost us a lot of money to improve or eradicate something we don't want, and it could be ruining the ecology. The second threat is septic systems. We have a lot of antiquated septic systems. They may be working, they may not be working. A lot of people think of out of sight, out of mind, it's no worries. But later in my talk, I'm going to talk about septics, and that could cause a problem as these failed septic systems pollute our lakes. And a third thing that I think is a threat, and it's local, and that's the dam that we have, not the dam that outlets our water onto the Crystal River, but it's the dam, the earth dam, that holds back all the sediment in Hatlam Creek. That is a ticking time bomb as we think of weather events, and we think of heavy rain coming down in ways that we've never seen or heard before. We talk about it in terms of the words rain bombs. Where we get 5 inches of rain in a half an hour's time, that's an exaggeration, but that earth dam may collapse and let down a lot of sedimentation that we don't want in our lakes. So we're really focused on that. It's a high priority, and I'll talk more about that. So those are the things that can cause problems. But let me talk to you about one of my favorite aspects of my job. And that started in 2004, and it's called the home visits. And I did some calculations. We started it in '04, so that's roughly 15 years of going to people's homes myself, and now I'm being joined by Trish, who also does home visits. And this is upon request of you, where you say, Rob or Trish, come to our home and walk around our property, and let's talk about what we can do to improve our ways of being lake friendly. So we go for consultation. It's free. We look at what's going well and what can be done to become even more lake friendly. We've had some successes. People have followed advice, and we've had some people who did not follow advice. And so to that, I think of 800 people on the shorelines of 17 miles of Big and Little Glen and the Fishers. And I think, okay, if most of us are doing the right thing, then most of our lake's going to be protected. And to the extent that it doesn't happen, we hope to minimize. One of the cool things about home visits is that our drain commissioner from the county, Steve Christensen, who gives out land use permits, when he sees a potential shoreline alteration permit come his way, and he thinks it might be adversarial to the watershed, guess what he does? He calls me, and he says, Rob, I want you to go to this property, and I want you to weigh in with the property owners, with the contractors, with the landscapers, and have a dialogue about what could be done to make sure that we protect the lake. And as I said before, we have some successes, and we have some not so good successes. I want to shift now to the drone survey, which many of you have heard about. We did our first drone survey in 2017, and now we're ready for round 2. And you might ask, well, in round 1, what was accomplished? Well, we have a benchmark now for what the shoreline looks like, so that if we have an historical archivable record of what's happened in 2017, we can now run another survey in 2019, and guess what we're going to do? We're going to compare. And what's happening on our shorelines is important, because that's the interface between the land and the water. And that's the most sensitive part of our watershed, is the shoreline. So we pay a lot of attention to it. And we want to have both the Big Glen and Little Glen and both Fishers to be in this 2019 survey. And we want to thank Dennis Wien. Dennis, you're here, right? Dennis over here. He's our zero gravity guy. Nice guy. Let's give him a round of applause. Dennis Wien is so professional in every stretch of the imagination. And he knows lakes. He's been part of Long Lake as a president and a real valiant steward of the watershed. Now I want to shift to the Crystal River. Back in 2017, we had a young aspiring intern by the name of Erica Becker, and she is the daughter of Ron Becker. Ron, are you here? Or Erica? I know Erica's in Alaska. Anyway, she did a fabulous job of looking at the lower reaches of the Crystal River. And she went to the level of insects that are in our waters at the lower reaches and did what I call a biodiversity or health index of how the river's looking at the lower reaches. And she wrote up a beautiful report. She did some calculations, and we found that the Crystal River is in pretty good shape in the lower reaches. But that part of the river does not experience the heavy traffic of kayaks and canoes. That gets impacted at the upper reaches and the middle reaches of the river. So what are we going to do this year? And we're in progress in doing that. We've hired Bruce Hood, a colleague of mine who has a good background in aquatic insects, and he's going to do the exact same procedure and protocol as Erica Becker did, but do it at the middle and upper reaches where we get heavy traffic to see what the health of the Crystal River might look like. That's a very important thing. And you might say, for those of you who live on the lake, who cares about the river? Well, be careful because I live on the river. And also be careful because the Sleeping Bear Bay is important to me, as it might be to you, and I hope it is to you. And the water that comes out of the Crystal River is all of our water. We're sharing that water with the bay. And I would hope that we're one of the few, if not the only, rivers in the country that can empty water into the bay and have it be as good or better than the bay that it empties into. Now I want to focus on Hatlam Creek. Hatlam Creek remains to be a concern for those of you who live on the South Shore, because you see some of the things that we can't trap in the Hatlam Pond. As you all know, we dredged the pond. Used to be like inches deep, and now it's a good 6 feet deep. And then as water flows over the pond and then over the dam, the solids can fall out and become a silt trap, but it doesn't catch everything. It doesn't catch the things that float, like broken down leaves. And those get washed over the dam, into the creek, and along the shoreline. But fortunately, that is not toxic. It's not long lasting. The winds will push it away favorably in a period of time, and you'll get back your clear water. But it does also transport tannic acid, which makes the water turn a little brown, but that typically clears up fairly quickly. And so we have a budget that we're setting up. The Glen Lake Association has been running somewhat at a surplus, and so we're saving money for the next maintenance dredge. And that will likely happen, we estimate, based on some engineering reports, where we've gone back to the pond and see how fast it's filling back up, because it took 50 years for it to fill up, but it's going to fill up again, but maybe at a greater rate. So we estimate the next dredge would be around 2029. How many of you happen to be hoping to be there then, huh? I hope so. We have a watershed management plan, and that's something that we submitted to the DNR back in 2002, and we updated it in 2009, and now it's 10 years old, and we need to update it again. So we are forming a steering committee made up of approximately 12 people representing different aspects of our watershed. It includes governmental officials, national park officials, lake association people, and scientists. And we're going to have that all be headed up with the contribution of the Leelanau Conservancy, who has a colleague of theirs that does this for their watersheds in the county, and her name is Yarrow Brown. So she's going to head up the steering committee. And we thought this is going to cost some money. So thanks to Tim Irvin, he's here today. Tim, stand up, raise your hand. This guy, he helped us. He helped us put together a plan to apply for some grant money to help pay for this update. And I want to thank Mike Litch. Mike is here too, because his past wife's Sarah Litch Memorial Fund helped us pay for our grant writer to put this together in about 2 weeks. And so what do we get from that? We get about a $25,000 grant that'll help pay for that effort. And that's a big deal, because once we have an updated watershed management plan, guess what? We're now eligible for some grants down the road. And if you don't have that plan in place and it's not up to date and it's expired, we're out of luck. So I think it's an important process. It'll happen over the next 2 years. Stay tuned for more on that. I want to shift now to our watershed protection project. Not to be confused with watershed management plan. We even get confused amongst ourselves. Which project are we talking about? They both start with the word watershed. So the Watershed Protection Project is really an effort on the behalf of the Glen Lake Association to get engaged with the local government. We have 4 townships in our watershed, and we really hope that we can get everybody, meaning the township boards, on the same page and have uniformity and close the gaps on where we don't have protection for our watershed. That is vitally important. And that's an endeavor that's going to take a while, and we're in the process of doing that. And thanks to Jim Duttmers, Jim, you're here, right? He and I co-chair that project. There he is over there. Let's give him a big round of applause. So in order to get uniformity, you've probably been reading in the news how the county has rejected a countywide septic inspection ordinance, unfortunately, after 2 or 3 tries. So we said, all right, let's go to the local townships and get them to approve it. So Glen Arbor did this, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. It's going great. We want to have Empire Township join the forces. They're going to vote on it Tuesday of this week. They've gone through quite a process of legally looking at it, and they're going to vote on it. We can all say a prayer right now, right? We hope they pass. We hope Casson Township, which, by the way, they are now entertaining the person that's the best at talking to them, and that's Eric Johnston from the Health Department. He's going to advocate for a septic inspection ordinance. We hope that Casson passes it, and Cleveland Township, which is not a big part of our watershed, has already got their septic inspection ordinance. So wouldn't it be great if all 4 townships had the same thing? That's part of this initiative of this watershed protection project. Our goal is to protect our surface and groundwater. And when I say that, I want you to tune in on that word groundwater. So what's the next step? If we get all the townships together and have a unified septic inspection ordinance, what's next? Well, the answer to that is we want to get a watershed zoning district. Some people refer to it as an overlay district. And we hope that we can put some provisions in that overlay so that if you live in our watershed, there's already rules on the books that says you have to do and can't do certain things to protect our water. And that's great. But we might want to consider tweaking that a bit more and adding some things that we think are important. If the townships agree, then we'll be hopefully on the same page with that, and you'll hear more about that as we move forward. Next, every once in a while you get a brainstorm, and I had a light bulb go on in my head. I'm thinking, we have these people, the staff that we hire to do the boat wash at the ramp, right? And they're there checking boats in and out, looking for invasives, spraying down there, sanitizing their boats, checking their fish wells and flushing their motors. Why not take a time out of that schedule of interacting with people and do a creel census, which is nothing more than talking to anglers or fisher people and say, what are you catching? What are you trying to catch? And what did you catch and release? And we can record that. And so for the first time ever, we're asking the boat wash people to do a creel census. It's working great, and thanks to Sally Ann. Sally Ann, raise your hand. Let's give her a big round of applause. Yeah. She told me that the anglers are excited about this, and why do we do it? And you say, well, maybe we can get some more data on our fish populations and what's going up and what's going down. But Heather Hedinger, our DNR watershed, or our DNR fisheries biologist, is going to take this data as we accumulate it over the years, and they're going to tweak the fish stocking process. Because they dump a bunch of fish into our lake, right? Lake trout, and they used to dump in by the thousands rainbow trout, but they quit doing it because nobody was catching them, and they weren't showing up in their trap nets. So why keep putting fish in a lake that they're not going to make it? So they quit doing it. So what we're doing is creating a data set for the DNR that might tweak their fisheries stocking practices that gives us a better sense of being responsible and proactive. Next, I want to talk about invasive species. A big thanks to the Trulask family. As you know, they are a family foundation that gave us a matching grant of $45,000, which we, in the first year of a 3-year grant process, raised that 45 to match. So we have, in the last 3 years, have had a $90,000 support for that project of running that boat wash to the tune of $30,000 a year. So for $90,000, we've been able to run the boat wash at cost-free, which is pretty cool. And that frees up the budget to do some other exciting things. And so we're keeping watch. And so Bill Meserve, I think, is going to talk more about this in specifics. But I want to tell you there are some invaders waiting to get in. I'm going to talk about Eurasian water milfoil. We're on the cusp of getting that. It's going to be problematic. It may be costly. We hope to find it wherever it might come in first and eradicate it before it becomes a big problem. Crystal Lake, they have their first invasion of Eurasian water milfoil. Torch Lake has just got their new invasion. Are we ready, and are we next for the next takeover of plants that really outcompete the native plants? So we got to be careful, we got to be ready, and we hope to catch them. We're worried about quagga mussels, not to be confused with zebra mussels, because these mussels go to the bottom of the lake and they filter feed and they clear the water, and they have fecal pellets that go down to the bottom and sequester the phosphorus and the nutrients to cause algal blooms on the bottom at 30 to 50 feet where we're not watching and looking. So we got to be careful about that invader. And starry stonewort, these are just 3 examples of the most pressing needs to make sure we're vigilant, and Bill will talk more about that. Okay, if I could have some slide advancing here next. We have a hydrolab, and the hydrolab allows us to go out to 10 different locations year-round to look at the water chemistry. Next slide. So this is my assistant, Laura Wiesen. We go out every 2 weeks on the Big and Little Glen, the Brooks Lake, the Crystal River, upper, middle, and lower reaches. We go to Hatlam Creek, and we monitor this, and we've got this huge database we started in '04. So what's going on? Well, the temperature is going up. The waters are getting warmer, and they're staying warmer longer. And you say, and for me as a swimmer, I'm going, yeah. I love to swim in clear, clean, swimmable water that's 77 degrees. That's just like when I'm going to the pool at the Y. It's perfect temperature. But it can't be good for the environment long term. So we're noticing that. We're noticing the pH is staying pretty stable. pH is the alkalinity and acidity of the water. And we're fortunate or blessed to have a natural buffer built into our bottomlands. It's called marl. And marl is what neutralizes the acid rain that comes into our watershed. The turbidity, that's the amount of cloudiness of the water. Well, we just talked about the clear waters of our lakes and our streams. That's a good thing, but it can't be too clear. So we're not worried too much about turbidity with our hydrolab testing. Dissolved oxygen is a problem at the deep basin. As I've written to you before, and maybe you've heard me say this, we're noticing a dead zone at the bottom of Big Glen at about 140 feet to about, let's go up to maybe 110 feet. There's that zone called the hypolimnion, and it's oxygen deprived right now, but usually in the fall when the upper waters cool and sink and push the bottom waters up to cause the fall overturn, and that mixing is important because it rejuvenates the oxygen levels at the bottom of the lake. Well, guess what? That cycle is now later and later in the calendar. So it's kind of like asking you right now. I want everybody to hold your breath and then hold it and hold it and hold it. And pretty soon you can say, well, I can't hold it any longer. It's kind of like Glen Lake. How long can it hold its breath without oxygen before it gets to breathe again in the fall and release this oxygen that's there but just can't get to the bottom? So a big thanks to, I want to highlight Mike Litch. He's my hydrolab guru. He helps me with these technical difficulties that we can sometimes run into, and he helps us with unloading the data from the surveyor, which Laura is handling, and putting it on a computer, getting into a spreadsheet, parking these numbers into nice little compartments where we can train ourselves to look at trends. Next slide, please.